journeys. Today we're going to talk about Emblem 4, which is of course part of the Atalanta Fugiens' wonderful Emblem book by Michael Meyer. Emblem 4 is an intriguing, if not somewhat disturbing emblem, not so much for the emblem itself, but for what's going on in the emblem. But fear not, we're going to delve into it and we're going to examine it. We're going to figure out exactly what is going on in this emblem. It's pretty interesting stuff. So let's take a look at the emblem. Okay, so as you can see behind me, we have two people embraced in a dance or something like that, a man and a woman. And then next to them, we have another gentleman offering them what appears to be a golden cup. So what exactly is going on here? Well, let's check the motto out so we can see what's going on, at least get a sense. The motto says, join brother and sister and hand them the cup with the love potion. Okay, that is a little weird, but it's okay, because what Michael Meyer is alluding to is an alchemical concept called the prima materia, which is a Latin phrase meaning the first matter. Now, way back when, before the universe was created, alchemists believe that there was a swirling mass of chaos and darkness filled with potential energy. And all that had to happen was for God to come along and say, let there be light. And then that subsequently created what we have today, which is our known universe. So everything comes from the prima materia. So it stands to reason that if everything comes from the same source, everything is related. Okay? So that's where this concept comes from. The brother and the sister, although they are opposites, they are related. Okay, so let's continue on and let's check out the epigram and see if it sheds some light on what we're talking about here. The epigram says, the human race would not be so numerous now in the world, if not, as first wife, the sister had been given to the brother. So what's he talking about here? He's talking about, I think he's talking about Adam and Eve and their first children. Okay, obviously, Adam and Eve had children, and they had children, and they had children, and so on and so forth. So he's kind of setting this up in a way so that it's perhaps not as disturbing as it seems to be. And let me say at this point that Michael Meyer is not advocating incest at any level, or any manner, any form, okay? However, it is an alchemical precept that is used occasionally in alchemical manuscripts. And we'll see an additional 2 or 3 emblems in Atalanta Fugiens referencing this kind of thing. But as I said, fear not, we're going to get there. And this is all going to make sense, I promise. Okay? So the epigram continues. So join 2 descendants of one pair of parents with confidence. That almost sounded like a commercial. That they may live in marriage as husband and wife. Marrying a brother and sister. What would it be like to be married to my sister? To be married to my sister. That's from The Bride of Frankenstein, for those of you who are young. One of my favorite movies, and with deepest regretful apologies to my lovely sister. Imagine being married to me, Vic. Poor you. Well, let's continue with the epigram and dispense with the silliness. Okay, so drink to each of them from the cup with the sweet love potion, and their love will raise the hope of a fruit. Well, if we're talking about alchemical operations here, like we always are, right? We can assume that the hope of a fruit means the philosopher's stone, right? Because that would be the result of the union of a male and a female. Of course, they're going to have a child, and in this case, the philosopher's child, the philosopher's stone. Okay, so I'm going to read one thing and only one thing from the discourse. All right, believe it or not, only one sentence, because this one sentence explains it all, and it set me on this raging research. It's the only way I can describe it. Like everything with Atalanta Fugiens, you know, you read one sentence, you go, whoa, 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 wait a minute. And here's what happened here. So let me read you the sentence, okay? It says, the brother is hot, dry, and choleric. The sister is cold, moist, and phlegmatic. Well, as soon as I heard that, I thought to myself, well, he's talking about the Humours. Humours, not as in Jerry Lewis,
Mommy, wulupu, wulupu, heist, mum tis. Say like, push, mommy.
I love Jerry Lewis. Look, either you hate him or you love him, right? I just love him. So anyway, so when you think of the four humors, and that's humors not H-U-M-O-R-S, it's H-U-M-O-U-R-S, humors, as in the idea that was brought about by the Greek philosopher slash physician, Hippocrates. Now, Hippocrates was an interesting guy in that he wrote what is called the Hippocratic Oath, and doctors still swear to the Hippocratic Oath today. He kind of began the medical profession in that sense, okay? So the humors that Hippocrates is talking about were based on the four elements: air, fire, earth, and water. And those elements were believed to have been the stuff of everything we have in the universe. So kind of like the prima materia, the Greeks believed that everything was made up of these four elements: air, fire, earth, and water. Now, the four elements manifested themselves within human beings as blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. In other words, as these four fluids that gave life to the human body. And those fluids further manifested themselves as personality traits in a human being. Okay, so if you had an overabundance of one of these four humors, okay, that affected your health and your behavior. So if you had too much of one humor and too little of another humor, you were out of balance. So the perfect human had the perfect balance of these humors. Now let's talk about the humors specifically, all right? And looking at this image behind me, we'll go clockwise. We'll start with blood. Now, blood is related to the air element, okay? And it's known to be hot and moist. So if you had too much blood in your system, you were known to be sanguine, which is optimistic, courageous, and amorous, okay? So maybe if you were too amorous, they'd do some bloodletting. Poor you, right? Okay, then the next item on the list there is phlegm. And that's related to the water element. And phlegm was thought to be cold and moist. And people like that, who had an excess of phlegm, were said to be phlegmatic, which is thoughtful and reasonable. Now, that should ring a bell because that's exactly what Michael Myers said of our sister in the image, all right? She was phlegmatic, cold and moist. So we know we're on the right track, okay? Pretty cool, huh? So now, the next one in line here is black bile. Okay, which is related to the earth element. And if you had too much black bile in your system, you were thought to be cold and dry, and you were thought to be melancholic. And interestingly enough, mental illness was thought to come from people who had too much black bile in their system. They were melancholy, they were sad, they were depressed. So it was believed that black bile was the fluid, the bodily fluid that caused mental illness. Pretty wild, huh? Okay, next we have yellow bile. Okay, this is important because it's related to the fire element, hot and dry, and a person with too much yellow bile was thought to be choleric, okay? All right, ambitious, easily angered, kind of those energetic people. So where does that come from? Oh, wait a minute, our brother, all right? Our brother is the one who is choleric, all right? Hot and dry. And so we know we're on the right track here. So we have the brother who's hot, dry, and choleric, and the sister who's cold, moist, and phlegmatic. So they're obviously opposites. So Michael Myers is leading up to something here, right? We can tell. Because if you think about it, there are other things that we discussed in previous videos, specifically Alchemy series of videos, about hot, dry, and cold and moist, and these opposites and how they work together, okay? But I'm putting the cart before the horse here, so let's go a little further down. Hippocrates lived around 400 BC. So we're going to fast forward 100 years to another great Greek philosopher slash physician, right? His name was Empedocles. Empedocles was really interesting in that he was a flamboyant fellow, if you will. He wore a purple gown and he wore a gold cap, and he had lots of children around him all the time. They found him to be charismatic, all right? this is what's written about him anyway. Obviously, we don't know, but it was what was written about him. And it was said that he struggled with the concept of science and religion, or science and spirituality, all right? Think of the movie Contact. I don't know if you've seen that, but it's such an incredible film. And it's Carl Sagan's spin on religion and science, okay? And it's a pretty interesting film. Oh, it's one of my favorite films. But anyway, I'll stop talking about Contact. But back to Empedocles, okay? Empedocles had this kind of war going on inside him, apparently, you know, between science and religion. And I think that's where he came up with the idea for his big contribution to the Humours, okay? So remember, we talked about Hippocrates and the 4 elements, okay? Air, fire, earth, and water. Now, Empedocles reasoned that, well, occasionally, if everything's made up of these 4 elements, they must come together at some point to create things. Well, what gets them to come together? What keeps them apart? All right? We're talking about attraction and repulsion. So what Empedocles came up with in his theory is love and strife. Love represented the attractive force in nature. Strife represented the repulsive force. So for the most part, these 4 elements are separate from each other, okay? So strife kind of rules the day when that happens. Then love comes along and brings them together, okay? So that's the attractive force. So this attraction and repulsion was the very thing that engendered life in the universe through the 4 elements, okay? I almost got that sentence out. Almost didn't get it out. All right, so that's kind of what we're talking about here. Now, I'd like to invoke something that I think will help clarify this somewhat. There's a book called The Kybalion. Now, The Kybalion is a Hermetic work that was written about 100 years ago or so, okay? And it talks about 7 principles. I'm not going to go into the 7 principles. What I am going to go into is one of them, and it's the principle of opposites. The idea is that there is a continuum, and at either side of the continuum are the polarities, obviously. So if we think of something like hot and cold are expressions of the very same thing, of temperature, right? Love and hate are expressions of the very same thing, emotions. So the brother and sister are polarities, okay, because they come from the prima materia. They are the same thing, they're made of the same stuff, but they are polarities. The cup of love that our gentleman in Roman garb is offering the brother and sister is from Empedocles' theory. It is the love, the force of love in the universe that brings the elements together. So I want to take this a step further, and this is my own pet theory, in that I think Michael Meyer is also talking about sulfur and mercury. Sulfur would be hot and dry, mercury cold and moist. Okay, so kind of cool. So now we kind of have a good picture of what's going on in this particular emblem. So the next thing we're going to look at is the music of Emblem 4. It's an extra special deluxe offering because for some reason, whether it was a lack of judgment or just insanity on my part, I decided that I would sing the first part of the 3-part fugue. The second 2 parts will be instrumental, as they usually are. Now, in addition to that, what I decided to do was to use some beautiful imagery from one of Robert Flood's magnificent works, okay? And it depicts the prima materia developing into our universe. So what you will see first is a black screen. Subsequent images will begin to reveal how light began to occur and emanate, and God's creation of the universe ensued. And at the end, the last image, you're going to see a dove hovering above the creation. It's really a beautiful sequence of images. And I hope you enjoy not only the music to the fugue, but also Robert Flood's wonderful imagery of the creation of the universe. So without any further hesitation, let's listen to the music to the fugue from Emblem 4 and take a look at Robert Flood's magnificent work. Non homine, Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you enjoyed the Fugue. I hope there are cats and dogs that have not suffered, and hopefully dogs aren't howling in your neighborhood and cats hiding behind the couch. Let's just hope. Anyway, thank you for watching and listening. I would like to thank people who have subscribed. You're my dearest friends. And thank you to those of you who continue to watch. And if you've stumbled upon this for the first time, subscribe. Typically about once every few weeks I release one of these videos. This is actually video number 10. So we're getting there. We still have another, a lot more emblems to cover, but that's the joy of this, right? I'm having so much fun doing this. And now that I'm retired, I actually can do a much better job for you guys because I really care about how this information is portrayed. I hope I'm accurate. And if I'm not, please let me know. Email me or post something under the video in the comment section. I would love to hear if I was wrong. Hey, you know what? You can't be right about everything, right? Even if I'm right about some things, I'd be absolutely thrilled. But thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this, and I will see you next time.